Thank you very much, A.C. Griffith, for joining us to talk about the purpose of chemtrail aerosol.
We're the only people in the world that actually got inside of that program.
You're talking about information on the inside of this program.
I'm talking about actually getting inside the program at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base where it's being managed. And we actually got into some of the people that were dissatisfied from within the program, and they divulged a lot of the acronyms and the purpose of the program and so on. And that's the only way that anybody could ever have broken the secrecy of this program. We know that people have died over this program. People have been hit to keep them quiet. And we know that other things have happened to keep people in this program. One of the key people that designed the aerosol, the barium salt aerosol, was set up by people in the Reagan administration, and he's now sitting in federal penitentiary. They still go to him to ask him questions. We have checked on information. We do confirm that the name of the project is Project Cloverleaf in the aircraft industry. It is very secretive. It is the most secretive thing I have ever encountered. People have died over this, talking about it. I was born before the Second World War. I'm an old guy, and I come from that generation and that mindset. This is my country, and I see my country being dissolved. My country is being destroyed right in front of my eyes, and the people are being hurt. But it's time. It's time to speak out and go public with these things.
I talked with you about a discussion I had with
the CIA finances projects with monies earned elsewhere. The monies that go into CIA projects don't necessarily come out of congressional appropriations. And I will tell you that the Congress as a whole is completely oblivious to the aerosol program. They are afraid to ask.
For those that don't understand scalar, would you define a scalar or tell us what scalar weaponry is?
It's very complicated. If I read you the definition, you still wouldn't know. Tom Bearden has been the Tesla guru for many years. He is highly respected. He is a brilliant man and a great American. We're experiencing and hearing from people all over the country that are experiencing dizzy spells, and they fall forward to the left. I'm sure many of your listeners right now are saying, my God, that's happened to me. Well, it's happening all over the country, and that is the manifestation of these scalar weapon systems. The town in Kansas was devastated as a result of guiding and manufacturing that storm. Now, that's going to increase in the rest of this year. The hurricanes were suppressed last year, but hopefully the United States science community will be able to suppress them again. Now, other countries have these weapon systems. We are late coming up to speed. We do not have adequate defenses against them right now. On the West Coast, Alaskan Airlines has been having a lot of trouble running into these scalar fields, but nobody knows about it. You're using barium salt and other DARPA aerosols. You're primarily using a mixture of barium salts to make it work over land terrain. That's how it started. And then DARPA got into it, and other agencies got into it, and God only knows where it is now and what's coming out of those planes. You're dealing with people, you don't know who they are, they're not accountable to anybody, they're capable of dastardly things. You see, the American people are totally out of the loop. Their reality is based on their life experience. You see, the way you judge things and the way you process things, your opinions are based on your own life experience. Most people haven't had these experiences. It's not designed to be politically correct, you know. We're coming into difficult times. Our country is being taken away from us, and the people are allowing it because of political correctness. To oversimplify, for the sake of understanding the general category, a scalar weapon produces something that you can perceive like a gravitational wave. It's not an RF wave, it's a gravitational wave, if anything, for the sake of understanding. There's nothing that we can do to prevent this from occurring. The missile systems, the missile protection systems are not as they have been presented to you. They are Tesla domes over cities, over territories. It is part of this scalar systems that afford protection from incoming missiles. It is not shooting a missile up. We also know in the study of this, as I told you earlier, when we started looking at this, there was one door, and then all of a sudden we saw 2 doors, then 4 doors, then 8 doors, and 16 doors, and 32 doors to explore, and that's why it's taken all of these years to do that. We know that atomic devices have been pre-positioned in American cities. We know that Israel pre-positioned atomic devices in Russian cities. So there's some standoff here, but we are in a desperate time, and people are oblivious to it.
Area 51 types, the conspiracy theory web, basically, the net that throws out these conspiracies. There's a thing called chemtrails. And for those of you who don't know what chemtrails are, let me explain. When like a plane flies by and there's those cloud-like formations that follow the planes, and it looks like sort of like a cirrus cloud, and it's usually like it looks like it's a cloud, really.
It sort of looks like
skywriting. That's what I was trying to think of.
cocaine.
Yeah, it looks like skywriting of some sort. Yeah. I know what you're probably saying to me right now is, aren't you talking about contrails, Matt? Come on, Matthew, really. It's the moist jet exhaust left behind by aircrafts that condenses when it comes in contact with the extremely cold, moist air of the upper atmosphere. Come on, you idiot, Matthew. No, exactly. They think, though, that thing is chemtrails. They think that stuff, that innocuous stuff that comes out of jet planes, airplanes, whatever, are chemicals being dropped on us by the government. I'm giving you a second to really digest this.
Or not.
Just, really. So anyway. Clarifying that the meeting is not to see if chemtrails exist, but rather to calm citizens concerned that they're being sprayed with billions of gallons of toxic chemtrails. Oh. I have gotten a lot of communications from people who are concerned, and there has been a sense that no one has been doing anything for them to address those concerns, she said. This local paper then interviewed 2 Havasu residents to see what they had to say about this chemtrail epidemic, I guess you can say. I can't believe I just said that. One small business owner says that he read on the internet that chemtrails are real, and that since the government lies to us all the time, there's definitely something going on. Another resident had this to say after noting that she's seen chemtrails for about 2 years now.
Yeah.
Every time they do the chemtrailing, there is some dramatic change in the weather. I noticed it this weekend, and then it got very windy. I'm not a scientist, man, and I don't know what's in the chemtrails, but I think we have a right to know instead of worrying about it every day. I see what happened. This poor person complained the chemtrails with Obama's HAARP machine. The poor woman. It's the HAARP machine that controls the weather, not the chemtrails. The chemtrails are there to psychologically alter the different chemicals in your brain so you fall easily under the one world government, new world order that Obama's putting together, so we all become the one socialist nation under Kenya. Jeez, come on, guys, get it right.
Member for British Columbia, Southern Interior.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I have well over 1,000 names here of petitioners from the Slocan Valley, Grand Forks, and Nelson in my riding, as well as other parts of BC, Ontario, Manitoba, Quebec, and Alberta, who are concerned about what they call aerial spraying or chemtrails. They're saying that aerial spraying is being carried out by aerial entities at high altitudes that create long-lasting plumes. They don't act as traditional aircraft condensation trails. It's being carried out without the knowledge of the people of Canada, and they're asking the government to fully inform the people of Canada about this aerial activity occurring at high skies, and to explain why it's taking place, and also to cease this activity forthwith.
The little picture is from a nanofabrication study, which shows you can make very high quality, and do this in just a jet in a very simple way, make high quality alumina particles just by spraying aluminum vapor out, which oxidizes. So it's certainly in principle possible to do that, and there's a big literature that's already looked at that. And you could do that by either building new versions of these aircraft or even re-engineering existing aircraft. So there's some ideas of that. So you go to an engineering firm and you want this done, They don't say this is hard or unusual. They say, okay, yes, we could do it. Aerosol geoengineering looks like it is so cheap that the cost is basically not going to be an issue. That means that implementation decisions will be risk-to-risk decisions. The risk of doing it against the risk of not doing it. And it makes the problem of how we govern it fundamentally harder and different and novel. So I've told you that it's cheap to deliver materials to the stratosphere, and I'm convinced that's true. I don't think that will change. But I think the more we do research, the less easy this will look, the more complicated the environmental effects will look, and that's a good thing, because right now it looks too easy. So I think that if we do more research, we're likely to find out that it's harder and more complicated than we thought, and the side effects are harder to manage, and that's a healthy outcome that will make it easier to do the management. Of course, the opposite reaction is possible. It's an empirical question, how people will actually react to knowledge about this. Another reaction is to say, if these crazy scientists are so concerned about putting CO2 in the atmosphere, they want to think about these things, and that might actually mean we should be more serious about the risks of CO2 in the atmosphere. And by the way, it's not really a moral hazard, it's more like free riding on our grandkids. And by the way, it's not really a moral hazard, it's more like free riding on our grandkids.
Numerous air quality studies, including from CARB, California Air Quality Resource Board, have named submicron-sized particulates as being particularly harmful for human respiration. Through all the discussions today, I have not heard any mention of this fallout, and has this been studied, and also the effects of a highly reactive metal like aluminum on toxifying soils and waters?
The question is, what would be the effects of these materials on human health if they came down into the stratosphere, in particular small particles and aluminum?
So the collaborators of mine working on the aerosol scheme are actually folks from Carnegie Mellon who focused on human health impacts. And while we haven't published it, that was the very first thing we did, was do the order of magnitude calculation in level pencil and paper, but with an expert on human health impacts about whether there could be an issue. And for aluminum or other particles, there are a lot of toxicological things that need to get looked at seriously. But if you're just thinking about the sheer number of particles and the human health impact of small particles, the answer is, well, we haven't published it. That was the first thing we looked at with some of the leading experts who do epidemiological research on human health impacts, and it's not even close to being an issue.
Clarify, so 10 megatons of aluminum dumped into the atmosphere would have no human health impact?
So let me be more careful here. To separate out the toxicological, so the alumina we've only begun to research and published nothing. Alumina we've only begun to research and published nothing. We haven't done anything serious on alumina, and so there could be something terrible that we'll find tomorrow we haven't looked at it. We haven't done anything serious on alumina, and so there could be something terrible that we'll find tomorrow we haven't looked at it.
I think the question is, how do you draw the line between some activity that is allowed and doesn't need global governance and activities that do require global governance?
Dr. John Holdren has agreed to serve as Assistant to the President for Science and Technology and Director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. I look forward to his wise counsel in the years ahead.
My personal opinion is that we have to keep geoengineering on the table. We have to look at it very carefully, because we might get desperate enough to want to use it.
Covered?
Sure. I was in the Air Force on active duty for 9 years, and I worked in bioenvironmental engineering.
And now, I know the issue came up with chemtrails. I know that's an extremely controversial issue. A lot of people are extremely divided on this issue, but you actually saw things from your experiences that kind of give it a little bit more validity than I actually saw ever before. Can you go into the details of exactly what you saw?
Yeah, basically, to summarize it, part of my job was to know everything that was going on in the military and what type of impact that might have on human health, and then the environmental aspects and impacts. What chemicals are we using? How are we disposing of it? Kind of cradle to grave. So we were the internal compliance people for following OSHA and EPA standards. One part of that process was to approve chemicals, hazardous materials. You know, what are you using? Why do you need it? Where's it being used? And tracking that disposal. After it being brought to my attention about chemtrails or geoengineering, I used to think it was crazy. It actually was disrespectful to my line of work, because here we are trying to prevent environmental aspects and impacts and not have anybody get sick from our operations. But in an attempt to debunk, it changed my life. I started noticing things. I started noticing large quantities on the system where I would approve chemicals that did not have a manufacturer name, wasn't tied to a building, and that was normal protocol. When I started asking questions, I slowly became demonized. A couple years passed after that. When I asked again and people realized I was kind of being more vocal about it on social media, I was starting to be thrown into a mental institution and have my daughter taken away.
Wow.
That changed my life. I no longer view the military the same way, and I feel like after 9 years of trying to uphold an oath, I'm able to do that now.
You uncovered a lot of these hidden chemicals. Where's the connection with the chemtrails?
Well, the connection is, at first, when I saw these large quantities of aluminum, barium, strontium oxides and sulfates, I thought, well, this could be for an industrialized process, for something called shot peening or, bead blasting, things that you see in kind of the automotive industry. Except those were already accounted for. I already knew how much was used for those processes. It was a little type of different constituent. And the first thing I did, part of my job was to sample air, soil, and water. So that's what I did. I air sampled the soil, the air, and the water. And due to my profession, I know at which levels or limits of detection you need to check that at. And the amount of pollution that was in my area, and this is tests I did in Oklahoma, in Georgia, in Chicago where I'm now. But in taking those samples, I knew the background, because a lot of these things are naturally occurring and elemental, but not in this form and not in this quantity. So how did it get there?
So just to clarify.
To whistleblowers, look at Snowden, look at Manning, people are scared. And I think because this topic is already labeled a conspiracy theory, I don't think the government necessarily views me as a threat yet. And I know it's not the most safe thing to do, but it's the right thing to do.
It's laughed at, it's made obscure. But just to bring
To start the new month, claims tonight international vapour trails laid by international organisations could be filling central west skies with dangerous chemicals. Opponents of these mysterious chemtrails, which have been appearing over Dubbo and other central west centres, argue science is being perverted to change local weather patterns and keep Australia in drought.
These weirdly shaped vapour trails above Dubbo make curious patterns, but concerns tonight it could signal a systematic poisoning of the skies above Western New South Wales. Jet planes often leave contrails, but these vapour trails aren't on any recognised flight paths, and they run closely parallel and cross over in gigantic X shapes, forming giant grid patterns across the sky. And it's not just Dubbo, these are happening worldwide. There's a growing belief that chemtrails, as they're known, are part of a secret international strategy to inject fine particles into the upper atmosphere to reflect sunlight back into space and prevent global warming.
One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do. An SAI program could limit global temperature increases, reducing some risks associated with higher temperatures and providing the world economy additional time to transition from fossil fuels. This process is also relatively inexpensive. The National Research Council estimates that a fully deployed SAI program would cost about $10 billion yearly. As promising as it may be, moving forward on SAI would also raise a number of challenges for our government and for the international community. On the technical side, greenhouse gas emission reductions would still have to accompany SAI to address other climate change effects, such as ocean acidification, because SAI alone would not remove greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. On the geopolitical side, the technology's potential to alter weather patterns and benefit certain regions of the world at the expense of other regions could trigger sharp opposition by some nations. Others might seize on SAI's benefits and back away from their commitment to carbon dioxide reductions. And as with other breakthrough technologies, global norms and standards are lacking to guide the deployment and implementation of SAI and other geoengineering initiatives. Now, I could go on and on and on and on about the things that fascinate me, but rather than talk about them, I thought I'd stop here and start the conversation with Judy, and then I can take...
I'm retired after 35 years of federal service in USDA, Soil Conservation Service, U.S. Forest Service. Therefore, I think I'm qualified for research and scientific observations. My information paper, Geoengineering What We Know, has 80 points on 3 pages that debunkers have been unable to refute for 10 years. And you can get those lab tests on the internet. Time limits me to selected brief reviews of my research and findings. So here's the big dogs. Since 2006, the snow on Mount Shasta has 5 times more aluminum, 61,000 micrograms per liter, than the soil underneath it. Pure white snow has more aluminum in it than mud. Can you beat that? The snow water is unsafe to drink on Mount Shasta. How can white snow have more aluminum than mud? Ooh! Now, the aluminum content of rain should be 0, with a pH of 5.5. When jets are not spraying, maybe so. When the jets are spraying, we get up to 13,100 micrograms per liter and pH up to 100 times normal. It goes really alkaline. This is over 13 times the federal safety limits for drinking water. Don't drink the water. In Mount Shasta, we watched 2 jets fly at a huge thunderhead, and it burned a 1-mile-wide hole, big blue hole in it, and the jets flew through it toward Klamath Falls Air Force Base. And the storm fell apart in about 20 minutes, and we had no more rain. What a weapon. And we saw this twice more in subsequent years. Now, terrestrial and aquatic insects are down to about 10 to 20% normal levels, except for sucking insects like box elder bugs and aphids. And also we saw that in ants. Bird populations, according to National Audubon Society, are collapsed and starving.
The sky left behind by airplanes and jets. Many in the science field know them as contrails or condensation trails. You may have also heard of the term chemtrails, which seems to be a pretty popular idea nowadays.
Water vapors don't sit in the sky and expand.
But are chemtrails real? To verify this claim, I spoke with Les Westbrooks, Associate Professor of Aeronautical Science at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. And he says, no, chemtrails are not real.
The idea of chemtrails is absolutely false. The idea of condensation trails is absolutely true. It's a meteorological phenomenon.
It's similar to blowing your breath in the air on a cold day, which forms a cloud.
What you have is warm, moist air going out into a cold environment, and the water vapor condenses and forms a cloud.
That's what's happening at high altitudes.
A jet engine, when it burns fuel, one of the byproducts of the fuel that it burns is water.
At low altitudes, condensation trails form differently because of low pressure on top of the wing.
And that low pressure decreases the temperature, and when the temperature decreases, it hits the dew point, and instantly you'll see a cloud form.
In recent years, the idea of chemtrails has taken off.
I truly think that social media is the only reason that this has even gotten any tread.
Well, they are part of our everyday sky, the white lines known as contrails that follow airplanes above. Now, to scientists, these lines are nothing more than water vapor and exhaust, but to conspiracy theorists, something much more sinister. Spokane City Council member Mike Fagan is raising some eyebrows after suggesting that airplanes, even those above our city, could be spraying chemicals on a regular basis to control our climate. His comments have many reacting, and tonight KXLY4's Kyle Simchuk is live on the Sky Deck. Kyle, you spoke to people in Spokane today. What do they think about all this?
Well, Nadine, this chemtrail conspiracy is a popular one. It's been circling the web for years, and we don't normally report on topics like this, but it's hard not to when they're brought up in city council meetings.
I think that they're just vapors off of an airplane, you know.
Councilman should probably do his research a little bit.
Tonight, reaction around the city about comments made by Spokane City Council member Mike Fagan on Monday while discussing climate change.
Could it be that the U.S. government, as well as multinational corporations, engage in SRM or solar radiation management? We already heard a little bit about, what are we spraying in the skies?
Fagan suggesting that the white lines we see in the sky could be a secret attempt by our government and other corporations to control the Earth's climate. The EPA, NASA, and NOAA say these lines in the sky are no more than water vapor found in aircraft exhaust, condensed in the negative 40-degree temperatures planes typically cruise in. But Fagan offered his own explanation. In an interview with the Spokesman Review, Fagan said, quote, "What I would like to do is issue a challenge to the citizens out there. If they see an airplane in high atmosphere, watch the airplane's activities for a while. You're going to see a trail come down out of that airplane that dissipates and enlarges itself, floating back down to the ground. Then what happens?" Today, around the Lilac City, people weighed in.
If you want to say that kind of stuff and you're willing to stand up for it, that's fine. And I think it's foolish.
No, it's nothing secretive. It's a byproduct of jet fuel.
I don't think it's going to harm us. We got worse to worry about.
On the stream, could blocking out the sun actually help reduce the temperature down here on Earth? Let me show you what I mean. For instance, you could have material pumped into our stratosphere. That material could reflect the sun's rays or solar energy all the way back to the sun, meaning that we down here are kept cooler. That is a very basic, rudimentary understanding of solar geoengineering. There are pros, there are cons, there are knowns and unknowns. There is a debate. Let's take a look.
It's one of the longest running conspiracy theories out there. Our Verified team looks into what airplanes are really leaving behind.
If you've ever looked up to see a plane streaking across the sky, you can't miss the long white clouds they leave behind. Conspiracy theorists claim the clouds are chemtrails, or trails of chemicals being dropped on people below. Videos on social media with the hashtag chemtrails have more than 143 million views. And even today, some people, like Verified viewer Monica, want to know if chemtrails are real. So, let's verify. Our sources are the American Chemical Society, the Environmental Protection Agency, the University Corporation for Atmospheric Research, and a 2016 study into contrails by UC Irvine and the Carnegie Institute for Science. All of our sources say no, chemtrails are not real. The streaks you see in the sky are called condensation trails, or contrails.
Climate engineering is now the law. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee has now signed into law the recently approved Senate and House legislation to ban climate engineering over the state of Tennessee.
Intentional injection, release, or dispersion by any means of chemicals, chemical compound substances, or apparatus within the borders of this state into the atmosphere with the express purpose of affecting temperature, weather, or the intensity of sunlight is prohibited.
This is the first bill of its kind to be passed into law. Governor Bill Lee, Senator Steve Sutherland, Representative Monty Fritz, and all their co-sponsors each deserve our deepest gratitude for their heroic actions in the face of staunch establishment resistance to this critically important legislation. Testimony from experts like Dr. Denise Sibley and Dr. David Perry was essential to this effort, along with all the help from behind the scenes.
Heavy metals have been detected in rainwater samples that contain dangerous substances such as strontium, barium, aluminum, and sulfur. We do not consent to this experimentation on our atmosphere and our citizens. Blocking the sun would affect our crops with potential famine, deforestation, and blocking of vitamin D production.
Insufficient sun exposure has become a real health problem. The reason that the honeybees are going away is because of the microcosm that they live in is affected by these aerosols.
Other states have tried unsuccessfully to pass similar legislation, but the Tennessee bill draft should now become the standard as it was carefully crafted in the most straightforward and effective form.
Welcome back. Polling shows most Granite Staters are concerned about issues like housing and the high cost of living. But the New Hampshire House took a bit of a detour last week as state reps debated legislation to ban what they call stratospheric aerosol injection. There was no mention of the word chemtrails in House Bill 1700, but lawmakers brought it up on their own on the House floor. This is the conspiracy theory that condensation trails left by aircraft in the sky are not frozen water vapor, but actually attempts to control the weather or somehow poison populations on the ground. It's been widely and repeatedly debunked by the scientific community, but that wasn't what reps told the public when they took to the House floor last week.
I'm not going to speak on what's currently going on in our atmosphere. Oh, he's talking about chemtrails. Oh, that's a complete conspiracy. That's not going on. That's never happened. Fine. Let's say it hasn't. I have here in my hands federal guidelines, a federal framework plan to implement such measures.
Weather weaponry is not a novel technology or some far-fetched theory. The theory of and the patents for weather manipulation go back over 100 years. Quote, weather was a weapon in Vietnam. Do you expect them to discontinue this? These trails in the sky that last for the entire day and dissipate to become blanket cloud coverage of our sky are not condensation trails.
And one of the more interesting aspects of this bill is that it would require county sheriffs to participate in the investigation of any public complaints brought forward regarding chemtrails. No word on how deputies would patrol or surveil the open skies over the Granite State. This bill was soundly defeated, but 58 reps did vote against, killing it.
Why have they now been officially banned by law in Tennessee? And why did Robert Kennedy Jr. say on August 26 of 2024, shortly after exiting his presidential campaign to help Trump in his election campaign and making America healthy again, Kennedy wrote this comment on an X post about chemtrails, stating, quote, "We are going to stop this crime." Man, am I glad I got video footage of chemtrails in 6 different states while on vacation, because it isn't a conspiracy theory. It's an actual conspiracy. The definition of conspiracy is a secret plan by a group to do something unlawful or harmful. So when certain people say you're a conspiracy theorist for exposing a secret plan, using your own brain, logical thinking, connecting the dots, you have become a danger to those covering these crimes, in turn making you into the bad guy for exposing them. It's called psychological warfare.
Could a strange substance found by a Southwest Arkansas man be part of a government test? Well, that's the question at the heart of a phenomenon called chemtrails, now getting widespread attention. Well, tonight, KSLA News 12 investigation reporter Jeff Farrell shows us the results of testing we had done about what's in our skies.
It seemed like some mornings it was just crisscrossing the whole sky. It was just like a giant checkerboard.
Bill Nichols snapped several photos of the strange clouds from his home in Stamps, Arkansas. They begin as normal contrails from a jet engine, but do not fade away like a normal contrail. Soon after, he saw particles in the air.
Because we'd see it drop to the ground in a haze.
Nichols then noticed the material collecting on the ground.
This is water and stuff that I collected in bowls. I had it set out in my backyard on my dad's pickup truck.
KSLA News 12 had the sample tested at a lab. The results? A high level of barium, 6.8 parts per million, more than 3 times the toxic level set by the EPA.
Armed with these lab results about the high levels of barium found in our sample, we decided to contact the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. They told us that yes, these levels are very unusual, but at the same time they added the caveat that proving the source is a whole nother matter.
Barium is a hallmark of other chemtrail testing, which even attracted attention from a Los Angeles TV station. There's already no shortage of unclassified weather modification programs by the government. But those who fear chemtrails could be secret biological or chemical testing on the public point to the 1977 Senate hearings in particular, which confirmed 239 populated areas had been contaminated with biological agents between 1949 and 1969. Later, the 1994 Rockefeller Report concluded hundreds of thousands of military personnel were also subjected to secret biological experiments over the last 60 years. But could secret testing be underway yet again?
I'd rather it be something inert and benign, something that's, not causing any damage, but I'd like to know what it is.
KSLA News 12 discovered chemtrails are even mentioned by name in the initial draft of House Bill 2977 back in 2001 under the Space Preservation Act. But the military denies any such program exists. Jeff Farrell, KSLA News 12 reporting.
And, you know, it turns out until 9 years ago, the government had the right under U.S. law to conduct secret testing on the American public under specific conditions. Only a public outcry repealed part of that law, with some exceptions.
Now, Jeff's report mentioned high levels of barium linked to those alleged chemtrails. We wanted to find out exactly what effects barium has on the body. We spoke with Mark Ryan, the director of the Poison Control Center. Ryan tells KSLA News 12 that short-term exposure can lead to anything from stomach to chest pains. Long-term exposure causes blood pressure problems. Ryan addressed concerns by chemtrail researchers that barium could be meant to wear down a person's immune system.
Anything that causes ill effects in the body long-term chronically is going to affect your ability because it's constantly working on the body. So from that aspect, yeah, that's a potential.
Ryan says he's conducted research on his own about secret government testing on the public, but he's still a bit skeptical about the alleged chemtrails, at least at the moment, because the Poison Control Center has seen no calls about exposure to barium.